Welcome! You're listening to Making Relationships Work. We're a company focused on women and their marriage. We lead and teach women just like you how to grow into and access, whenever you need to, your wise woman self, the part of you who is deeply connected to your purpose, your innate wisdom, and your husband and family. We teach women in marriages how to rebuild trust and connection, to work through conflicts, no matter how deep, no matter how painful, and to lead your marriage to a place where the two of you experience marriage mastery. This podcast is about learning the systems and techniques that truly work to reconnect you back into your marriage so that you can experience the freedom that comes with a masterful marriage. Since this podcast is totally free, if you're getting tons of value and you want to support us and make sure that you get more of this good stuff, subscribe below and rate and review our podcast today. Now, on to the show. Hello, Women Making Marriages Work. Hello, Making Relationships Work podcast and YouTube channels. It's delightful to be here with you tonight. Although we are going to be talking about a pretty tricky conversation, and it's not one that we being me, generally covers, because the intention here is to invest in a marriage and have it break through where the two of you get to be together. But of course, that's not always the way that it works in real life. And so today we're going to talk about divorce, we're going to talk about separation, and we're going to talk about what that feels like as a person who is getting a divorce and what that feels like in your family if you have children. We're going to talk about all of that, and then we're going to talk about what you can do to influence the divorce away from happening, and what you can do to take care of each other if the divorce needs to happen. So we're talking divorce today. So the statistics of divorce are somewhere between 40 and 50% of American families will go through divorce. And navigating that experience is quite a story to manage. You will go through all kinds of physical pain, the grief and loss of separation, and the anger and frustration and resentment as to why you're here. It goes from feeling like an emotion to an embodied physical feeling, and it's very, very painful. And so as we start to think about separating a family into two families, we need to acknowledge the fact that each family is an ecosystem or a microculture. And you have created this microculture, this ecosystem over time when the two of you brought your lives together. And as you've weaved it through day in, day out, through birthdays and celebrations and navigating hard times and the normal rhythm of school and work, and that daily sense of knowing where your person is throughout the day, that closeness that you once had. As you start to dissolve that, it leads to this very painful separation. And one metaphor that it is, and is a good analogy for this, is you're looking at a tree where you have to sever a limb in order for the tree to survive. And it's about undoing more than it is about redoing or regrowing. The undoing is the letting go of the limb, undoing the way things have been, undoing the way we live together, the way we interact together, the way our assets are structured. All of that has to be undone. And so for the first time in your married life, you and your partner will have to figure out how to do the opposite of what you've been doing, which is bringing a life together. Your job now is to bring your lives apart. And even though it's been co-created this whole way, you're actually now co-creating a separation. And what we know is that you have to write a new story as you start to separate. And what most couples do is they start to make the other one the bad person. If they would only have done this, they're terrible in this way. And we do that to be able to build enough energy, I think, to make that painful break, to sever that painful limb of a tree. And when we're talking about the level of story that you have to tell yourself to have yourself be able to sever that limb, have the power to be able to do that, what we're talking about is a set of emotions that are associated with that story that feel pretty bad for you. There'll be grief and loss and resentment and frustration and anger and perhaps jealousy and rage. There'll be a sense of selfishness on the other person's part and a lack of their love for you or courage to do more work or to do it better. And all of these negative feelings, of course, leave a chemical, a neurochemical input on your body. And day after day after day after day, you're living in these heightened negative states. In fact, you're going to eventually start to see your partner and physically have a repelling sensation in your body that says, you are the enemy. You are the enemy, and I can't be near you. And that's largely to survive, yes, because you've had to sever the limb to save the tree. Now, when you're living in a physiology like this, it's very hard to have a happy life. It's very hard to find good in the other person. It's very hard to have a story that is kind and gentle about your husband and about the reason why you've split up or you've separated or you've divorced. And yet, that story that you're telling from a body that is full of those stress chemicals, those big feeling chemicals, your beautiful ecosystem can feel that story. So even if they're not talking about it, even if they don't tell you anything about what it's like to be them, their nervous systems, your children's nervous systems, mirror the adult nervous system as a way of saying, am I safe here? Is everything okay? Where am I in what's going on? And if parents' nervous systems are flooded with those big feelings, they're flooded with the cortisol or the stress hormones, then what happens is we start to make a nervous system, our nervous system that our children tap into, we start to make that unsafe as well. And so children will tune into your nervous system and say, am I safe or am I not safe? And of course, this is relatively unconscious. Some parts will filter up into consciousness, but the connection to your nervous system is one that your child has learned how to do since they were a teeny tiny baby. That's how you used to be able to translate where your child was and what they needed, was that you could share that sense of um, understanding or empathy into their nervous system. Does that make sense? And so what happens is these big feelings that you hold about the story you have of why you need to sever the limb from the tree, it becomes a kind of neurological hot button where you don't actually have to see your husband, soon to be your ex-husband, in order to trigger that onslaught of chemicals that are heightened in ways that bring distress and stress, and heightened in ways that bring anger and frustration and resentment and doom and despair and fury. Yeah. We can now start to create that physiology, physiologic, oh my gosh, physiological response just by thinking about them. So we see a reminder of them, or we are at home and we remember something. We then snap into that state. And so that state becomes very active. And when we're in that state, we're unable really to be able to manage those big feelings. And so they start to leak out of us. And of course, that goes into the ecosystem that your children live in and that your husband still migrates in, even though you're starting to separate. And so you've got these very big stress hormones going on. You've got this knowledge, and I assume this knowledge in you, that when you've got those big feelings, your ability to be able to work things through calmly from a space of how will this affect me? What's the next right thing? What does my wisdom internally say? You know, at that kind of nice low heart rate where things feel in balance, that starts to disappear out the window. We start to not be able to think so clearly. We certainly lose our ability to communicate and hear clearly what the other person is saying, because we're so full of those big feelings that leave that chemical imprint in our body that makes it hard for us to think, communicate, or hear clearly. And so we're really perpetuating this sense of a nervous system that's not great. Does that make sense? So, divorce, of course, is a time when you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle psychologically, physiologically, and emotionally. You're going to have impairments in all of those spaces. And you know what? At that same time where you're under that load, you're really going to have to make critical decisions. Where will I live? How will I finance things? What sort of support do my kids need? Should I be finding them a psychologist? Do I have to sell or relocate in my house? Do I have to navigate new schools? And you are navigating grief and loss and trauma that comes from severing a limb from your tree. So it's this very heightened state. And of course, your children feel that. They feel it, they see it, right? They can feel it in their nervous system. We've covered that a little bit. And they interact in that energy, in that ecosystem every single day. There's no real relief for them. And so, what I want you to know is that if you were to take a blood sample from your children in this position, you could tell that they are under this level of pressure because they would have high levels of cortisol in their blood. That's the litmus test. Kids who are in happy, stable marriages or are from a happy, stable marriage have no cortisol or low levels of cortisol in their blood. Kids who are going through a marriage breakup or under pressure in the family home have high levels of those stress hormones. And remembering this when you're in that separation space is really important, because what you're feeling in that moment of fury and resentment and rage and anger and jealousy and upset and hurt and that sense of horror, how did this happen, is that you'll be feeling like it's going to threaten to overtake you. You're absolutely engrossed in what it's like to lose the love of your life, your marriage partner, the person you assumed you would grow old with. You're losing that. And your story is changing. You're severing a branch on the tree that you bound together with such hope and such connection and such love and such optimism all those years ago. And so you of course are having a big reaction to that. But what you need to remember is your kids are also having a huge reaction to that, even if you don't think they are, even if they show you no signs of it. They are. Of course they are. Their family is imploding. Their mum is full of feelings. Their dad is full of feelings. Neither one of those people are coping that well all the time. Both of them are triggered by the other one. Both of them are trying to undo this whole system that they've spent so much time and care and tenderness building. And it is excruciating for both. So when you look at your ecosystem of a family, let's say it's the four of you, mum, dad, two kids, you've got to understand that you have a family nervous system. And when the top of the tree, which is you and your husband's nervous systems are out of alignment, you've got to understand that the interconnection that the four of you have means that even if it's not spoken about, your children are reading that family nervous system. And they want you to stop. They want you to stop even if they're not speaking it to you. What they want is to go back to safety. They want to go back to Parents who have nervous systems that are regulated, they want to go back to a space where even if the divorce happens, it still feels safe and loved and that everything is going to be okay. It's not the way they wanted it, but it's actually going to be okay. And so, how do you do this? Well, the first thing is let's see if we can help you not go through divorce. So, if this is speaking to you and you are steps away from divorce, you're going to watch my masterclass and you're going to book a call with me so we don't have to go down this pathway. If it is too late, if it is time to have the divorce, if the divorce has happened, if you are in the process of separation and the end is clear, maybe you're not in this group, maybe you've moved on to a different type of group. But what I want you to know, if you're here and this is resonating with you, is I want you to understand that your children are hurting and how you respond or don't respond to what your child shares about their physical experience of this separation is critical. You need to understand that they're going to show up in this stress that they've got in their system, which comes from that family ecosystem, is going to show up in these funny ways that may not match what you think is stress. So they're going to have tummy hurts or upsets probably at bedtime when they've got to separate from you and be in a different room. They're going to have this list of reasons which are kind of symptomatic. Things at school aren't going right. There's things with friendships that are tricky. There's trouble perhaps with wetting the bed or a school refusal. There are rashes. There are vomiting or diarrhea. There is stomach upsets. These things that seemingly, these list of upsets that seemingly have no immediate cause and therefore there's no remedy that you can put in straight away, are probably signs of stress. And so you'll want to make it better and you're going to try and distract them. And I don't want you to distract them. I want you to try and meet them with that where they are and name what it is you're seeing. When we distract or cheer kids up who are in pain, we're teaching them that we don't see their pain. We're teaching them that pain should be diverted and we should just not think about it and go over here and do something different. And so divorce is bigger than that. Divorce requires a story that makes sense of what that child is going through, what your ecosystem is going through, why the branch is being chopped, and now what this new life is going to look like. And so what I want you to do is to notice your body language, notice your kids' body languages, notice their tone of voice and their eyes. Imagine what are they saying or not saying in their actions and gestures, and be curious. Don't project your feelings and thoughts. Instead, expand on where they are. Listen more than speaking. Try and help them make a map for where they are and validate what it feels like to be them. Lots of empathy. Because when you do this type of interaction, that mysterious tummy ache disappears under the understanding of why it was there and having it be seen and heard and loved and validated. And that's what I want you to do. The heartache of divorce is something that you can't circumnavigate. You can't avoid it. It is excruciating to undo an ecosystem and to cut a limb off a tree. Yeah. But what we want you to know is that you can still create a story of a family who is separating, but everything is stable. Everyone is okay. Everyone is growing and perhaps in pain sometimes, but doing the next right thing. And so I want you to think about the story you're telling as you separate. I want you to think about the story if you're watching this and you're not separating. I want you to think about the story you're telling about your husband and the problems that you have that are still causing stress in the marriage, because that stress still fits in this idea of an ecosystem that your kids are tuned into. Does that make sense? So I want you to make sense of the story and start to create and write a story that ends well, where there's so much love, where there is differences and this has irreparably broken down. And it's still okay. He's still a good man. You're still a good woman. And we do things like this now. And if you have that opportunity to change your marriage and not go down the divorce space and not have to put your child through the severing of a limb, then please, please, please watch my masterclass, book a call, let us do the work so that this isn't your story, so that we are not having to talk through how do you support your kid who's in this space of a breakdown of a marriage that they don't want and that they didn't ask for. And if it is the case that it has to happen, then let's write a story that has the two parents be heroes, where they're wonderfully able to love their children through this and respectfully part ways with their husband. And that takes a lot of personal power from both people. And I suggest if you need that help, then you should go and get the help to be able to do that as a team. The very best predictor of a child's security of attachment is not what happened to their parents as children, but instead how their parents made sense of those childhood experiences. And so I want you to have a think about how are you making sense of those experiences for your children as you walk this crisis as a couple, as you sever that limb, because the story you tell is very important. It's actually crucial. And it's got to come up from a place of truth and authenticity and wisdom. And that means you're going to have to grow. You're going to have to grow out of that pain of resentment, blaming, anger, justification, fury, jealousy, rage, shame, depression, anxiety. You're going to have to grow out of that. You're going to have to grow out of that into somebody who embodies safety for their kids, who truly can find peace in the severing of the limb and leading the life forward in a way that's still connected to the husband, but in a way that's connected safely for the children. This is your challenge. So, tonight has been a huge conversation on divorce. I'm really serious that divorce doesn't have to be the story that you write. And so I want you to watch that masterclass. I want you to book a call. If the story has to be written, then write a good one. By jingos, write a good one. Write one that is kind and connected. Gwyneth Paltrow gets a lot of flack for that conscious uncoupling, but it's not dissimilar to what we're talking about today. It's just got a fancy title that the world kind of mocked. But the telling of how your marriage came to this breaking point, it's going to evolve as the story evolves. And as it does, you'll begin to understand the role that you played in it. And it's important to see yourself as not a villain or a victim. Instead, it is a story of what happened. And so I want you to see your ex-husband from an equally generous and compassionate lens so that you can write a story that's different. And women who are going to stay married, the same idea applies. Your husband is not a villain. He is not a victim. He is a man who is a good man at heart, or you wouldn't have married him. And in doing so, when we see them as better, we start to show up better because we're telling a different, better story. And I want you to know what that is. I want you to know how to do that. Okay. I feel like that's a lot we've covered tonight. And so I'm going to say to you, find a way to tell a story that honors all the people in it. You can tell the truth about what the pain feels like, but have it be a story that's authentically connected to truth and growth in a kid-friendly, palatable way. And allow yourself to feel good about making hard decisions and doing the work that you've been called to do, whether you stay in the divorce lane or whether you stay in the marriage lane. Either way, you're going to have to grow and transform. So find a way to feel good about that growth. Life is meant to be about growth. There's nothing wrong with growing. In fact, it's the whole point. And when we learn, it hurts sometimes. And that hurt, that suffering, is part of showing us we're growing, and it's okay. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to get back up and try again. And it's okay if you fail again after that. The most important thing is that you have your eye on the prize of living a happy life with a great story, a really authentically true story that has a happy ending. And that happy ending can start soon, even if you're in the middle of a divorce, even if you didn't ask for it, even if you wish this wasn't your life. It's still possible. So my loves, watch the masterclass, book a call, and if you're separating, find a way to have a different story. Lots of women who are separating come through my program to learn how to resolve what has happened. They also, from this space, learn how to heal the parts that have hurt so much so that they can truly part ways as friends, so they can write a different story. If that's you, we're very happy to talk with you as well. So go ahead and book that call. Leilani will put the 2 links in, and I will see you soon. I love all of you. Please know that when you show up from a place of courageous leadership with so much love in your heart and authentically speaking your truth from a kind, connected way, you can't get it wrong. Sometimes what we need is help to find that version of ourselves so we can lead our families, so we can lead our husbands, so we can lead ourselves to the life that we want, even if it's got parts in it that we don't like. And so tonight I say farewell. Let me know if I can help. Watch that masterclass, book that call, watch my other things, ask me a question in the comments. I'm here as a resource for you. I want you all to write stories that are uplifting, connected, kind, phenomenal stories. Let your legacy be the way that you loved and lived, even if that means divorce, even if that means rapid transformation that hurts a bit. All of that is okay. All of that is about becoming a wise woman. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye, darlings. Thank you for tuning into today's show. If you're feeling fired up and you're ready to grow and you want to know more about how to do that, here is what I want you to do now. I want you to watch my marriage masterclass. This masterclass will show you how my clients have turned their struggling marriages into thriving marriages, even without their husband's buy-in. How my clients have gone from cycles of poor communication, disconnect and loneliness to being teammates and soulmates with their husbands again, even after they've already tried everything. And the proven system my clients use to start transforming their marriages in minutes, not years, because life is too precious to waste one more minute in an unhappy and unfulfilling marriage. So if this is what you're looking for, I want you to click the link below and take a look at my masterclass.